The screen lit up by accident. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't searching. I was just trying to turn the TV off because the house felt too quiet after the door slammed and my mother's words followed me down the hallway like spit. "Stay home, cow." The engine roared. Gravel cracked. Then nothing. I stood there in the living room, still holding the remote, watching their taillights disappear through the lace curtain. My reflection stared back at me from the black screen. 34, hair tied too tight, shoulders slumped like I'd been folded wrong and left that way. My name is Rachel Miller. I'm the daughter who stayed. The one who cooked, cleaned, paid, and absorbed. The one who was always told I was too much, while somehow never being enough. The TV flickered back on before I could press the button again. Not a channel, an input screen. A blue rectangle, a progress bar, a list of folders updating themselves. Syncing. I frowned. That was new. My parents had left their tablet charging on the coffee table. They did that a lot lately, left things behind, trusted me too much, assumed I was invisible. The tablet chimed softly, a mirrored notification lighting both screens at once. A folder name appeared. Estate_revision_final. My stomach tightened. Not because I was curious, because I wasn't supposed to exist in anything labeled estate. I told myself to turn it off. I even reached for the remote again. But then another file auto-opened on the TV, clean, corporate, unmistakably deliberate. A scanned document. Dated. Signed. My father's name sat at the bottom in his unmistakable slanted handwriting. Above it, a line that made the room tilt. Primary beneficiaries, Thomas Miller and Elaine Miller. My brother. My mother. I blinked hard, waiting for my name to appear below theirs. A continuation. An appendix. Anything. Nothing. Just percentages. Clean numbers. Cold as winter. I stepped closer without realizing it, my bare feet sinking into the rug my mother always reminded me she paid for. My breath sounded too loud in my ears. I scanned again, slower this time. There it was. Rachel Miller, occupancy only. No ownership. Occupancy. Like a chair. Like a dog bed. Like something temporary and replaceable. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from my mother, sharp and cheerful. "Don't wait up. Make sure the house is clean when we get back." I looked back at the screen. The file kept scrolling, amendments, dates, notes in the margins. Someone had been busy. Someone had been planning while I was folding towels and paying utility bills and being called a cow for eating dinner I helped buy. A memory hit me then. My father insisting last month that I start transferring my paychecks into a family account. My mother hovering when I logged into my banking app. My brother suddenly asking about the deed, about future plans. This wasn't new. It was just finally visible. The TV chimed again. Another folder unlocked itself. This one wasn't labeled final. It was labeled executed. My hands started to shake, not with anger yet but with something colder. Something clearer. Whatever they thought they'd finished while driving away laughing, they were wrong. Because I was still home. And the screen was still on. I didn't sit down. If I sat I might cry. And if I cried I might stop. So I stood there, arms crossed tight over my chest, watching the screen like it might blink and apologize. It didn't. The executed folder expanded on its own, syncing in real time. Timestamped files stacked neatly, PDFs, spreadsheets, email exports. This wasn't a draft. This was a paper trail. The first document was a deed amendment. Property address, my childhood home. Effective date, 6 weeks ago. Grantors, Daniel and Elaine Miller. Grantee, Thomas Miller. My brother. I zoomed in until the words blurred, then sharpened again. The notary stamp sat in the corner, embossed, official. I checked the date twice. 6 weeks. That was the week my mother told me not to worry when my name wasn't showing up on the utility portal anymore. A glitch, she'd said. It wasn't. Another file opened, bank statements from the so-called family account. The one my paycheck had been flowing into every month like clockwork. Columns of numbers. Deposits labeled with my employer's name. Withdrawals that weren't mine. Large ones. A transfer for $18,400, memo, legal services. Another for $6,200, survey and appraisal. Then a recurring withdrawal every Friday afternoon, neat and consistent, routed to an account ending in numbers I recognized instantly. My brother's. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My last deposit was there, right on time. My balance was not. I matched dates. Every dollar I earned over the last 2 months had been redirected, filtered, and repurposed with a precision that made my skin prickle. Not stolen in a rush. Reassigned. like I was an asset they managed. My pulse stayed steady. That surprised me. Then came the emails. A chain titled Rachel, Living Arrangement Contingency. I recognized my mother's typing immediately, too many exclamation points when she was pretending to be kind. She doesn't need to know yet. As long as she keeps paying, there's no reason to rush. Once the occupancy clause is in place, we're protected. Protected. From me. My father replied later that night. Make sure the wording is airtight. No equity. No claim. If she refuses later, eviction is clean. Eviction. From the house I paid taxes on. From the roof I repaired. From the space I was told was my home as long as I behaved. There was no misunderstanding left to cling to. No emotional fog. Dates, signatures, account numbers, everything lined up with a cruel, methodical calm. I scrolled to the bottom of the folder and froze. A video file. Security footage. Our living room. Me on the couch folding laundry. My father's voice faint in the background from another room. She won't go anywhere, he said. She needs us. My mother laughed. Soft. Satisfied. I closed the folder gently, like tucking something dangerous back into a drawer. Outside, a car passed. Somewhere a dog barked. The world kept moving, unaware that something inside me had just settled into place. They hadn't made a mistake. They had made a plan. And now I had the proof they forgot to lock. I didn't confront them. That decision came easily, too easily, like it had been waiting for me. Anger would have been loud. Accusations would have warned them. I needed something quieter. So I kept doing exactly what I'd been doing. When my parents came back that night, smelling like fried food and triumph, I smiled and asked if they wanted tea. My mother barely looked at me when she said yes. My father loosened his jacket and dropped it on the chair I'd fixed last winter. No one mentioned the screen. The tablet. The silence they'd left behind. Good. Over the next few days, I watched them the way you watch a stage play after reading the script. Once you know the ending, the actors get sloppy. My brother started stopping by unannounced, walking through rooms like he was measuring air. He asked questions that sounded casual and weren't. So, you're still comfortable here, right? Any plans to move soon? Just curious. I answered lightly. I always had. My mother began spending money faster. New curtains. A kitchen consultation. She talked about renovations like they were already approved, already hers. My father stopped checking the mail entirely. He didn't need to. Everything important had already been redirected. They thought the hardest part was over. At work, I asked for nothing. No time off. No raises. I let my paycheck continue flowing into the family account, right on schedule. Predictability was my camouflage. Every deposit reassured them. Every quiet evening reinforced the lie they told themselves, that I was compliant, dependent, harmless. Inside, I was cataloging. Dates. Amounts. Patterns. I requested copies of my employment contracts and pay stubs under the pretense of updating records. I downloaded my full banking history, then archived it in 2 places. I ordered a certified copy of the original deed from the county, public record, no questions asked. It arrived on a Tuesday. My name was on it. Not prominently. Not generously. But legally. A co-signer from years ago, when my credit had helped secure a refinancing my parents couldn't get a loan. I remembered the argument back then, my father insisting it was just paperwork. Paperwork mattered. I said nothing. At dinner that night, my mother complained about how expensive lawyers are, sighing dramatically. My brother nodded like a man already used to nodding at bills he didn't pay. I passed the salt. They began leaving documents out more often. A folder on the counter. A printed email by the printer. Carelessness grows where confidence lives. They were relaxed now. Victorious people always are. One afternoon my brother joked, "You know, Ratch, you've got it pretty good here. Some people would kill for free housing." I smiled at him, slow and neutral. "Yeah," I said. "Some people would." That night, alone in my room, I laid everything out on my bed, not physically but mentally. I traced the shape of it all. The deception, the financial misuse, the occupancy clause designed to make me removable. It was almost elegant. They hadn't just underestimated me. They'd mistaken my silence for ignorance. I turned off the light and lay back, staring at the ceiling I'd repainted myself. Somewhere in the house, my parents slept peacefully, certain the future was locked down and labeled in their favor. I let them rest. Pressure works best when applied slowly, and only after the target forgets they're being watched. The first letter arrived on a Thursday. Cream envelope. Return address I didn't recognize. My mother opened it at the kitchen counter, humming to herself, until the color drained from her face. "What is this?" she asked, turning the page toward my father. I didn't look up from my coffee. It was a formal inquiry. Polite. Precise. Requesting clarification on ownership, fund transfers, and fiduciary responsibility related to the family account. No accusations. Just questions that required answers and documentation. My father cleared his throat. Probably a mistake. I stirred my cup once. Maybe. The second letter came 2 days later. This one referenced specific amounts, dates, account numbers. It included a reminder about misappropriation laws and the obligation to respond within 10 business days. My brother stopped joking after that. He started calling me into rooms under the guise of concern. "Ratch, you seem distant. Everything okay?" His voice was softer now, careful. He offered to help with my finances, as if they weren't already elbow-deep in them. I thanked him and said I was fine. On Monday, the bank froze the family account pending review. My mother cried at the dining table. Real tears this time. "They can't do this," she kept saying, as if the bank were a misbehaving child. My father paced, phone glued to his ear, insisting there had to be a workaround. There wasn't. By Wednesday, a notice of audit followed, routine language but devastating implications. Someone had flagged irregularities. Someone had noticed repeated transfers from a contributing party without authorization. I watched them unravel without adding a single word. That night, my mother knocked on my door. She brought tea. She used my name like it was fragile glass. "Sweetheart," she said, sitting beside me. "If there's something you know, something you've done, we can fix it together." I met her eyes calmly. Fix what? Her mouth opened. Close. The next tactic was money. My father offered to reimburse me. A lump sum. No paperwork. Just trust. He framed it like generosity, like they were doing me a favor. I declined. Then came guilt. My brother talked about stress. About how this was affecting Mom. How families don't do this to each other. He asked if I really wanted things to go this far. "They're already far," I said. "I'm just standing still." On Friday afternoon, a courier delivered a formal demand letter addressed to all three of them. It cited my legal standing on the original deed. It outlined the unauthorized use of my income. It requested restitution and warned of escalation. My father slammed it on the table. "This is an attack." I finally looked up. "No," I said evenly. "It's a response." The house felt smaller after that. Like the walls had leaned in to listen. No one raised their voice. No one needed to. The pressure was doing the talking now, measured, undeniable. They stopped sleeping well. I heard footsteps at night. Whispered calls. Doors closing too softly. Confidence had drained away, replaced by calculation and fear. Still I stayed calm. I went to work. I cooked dinner. I lived my routine like nothing had changed, because for me it hadn't. I was no longer reacting. I was enforcing. They thought control looked like signatures and silence. They were about to learn it also looks like patience. And knowing exactly when to stop pretending you don't see the leverage in your hands. The collapse didn't announce itself. It arrived quietly, disguised as logistics. First, the contractor canceled. My mother took the call in the hallway, voice clipped and rehearsed, promising it was just a delay. When she hung up, she stared at the wall for a long moment before smoothing her sweater and walking back into the kitchen like nothing had happened. Then the lawyer stopped returning my father's calls. I knew because my brother started pacing again, phone in hand, muttering about retainers and conflicts. He didn't look at me when he spoke. None of them did anymore. Eye contact requires confidence. The bank released a partial statement at the end of the week, itemized, annotated, clinical. It confirmed what I already knew. The funds had been misused, reallocated without consent, and funneled into personal accounts unrelated to household expenses. The numbers didn't lie. They never do. My father tried one last shortcut. He sat across from me at the dining table. I'd refinished myself, hands folded, voice low. "Let's end this cleanly," he said. "We'll transfer a portion back. Enough for you to get started somewhere else." Somewhere else. Like I was a project being relocated. I took a breath, slow and deliberate. "I'm not negotiating my own money." His jaw tightened. "Rachel, be reasonable." "I am," I said. "That's why I won't take a deal that only exists because you were caught." The bribe shifted shape after that. My mother cried again, louder this time. She talked about her health, her nerves, how this stress could kill her. My brother hinted at future inheritance, how cooperation now could mean generosity later. I listened. I nodded. I refused. Every refusal narrowed their options. By the following Tuesday, the county sent notice acknowledging my co-signatory interest on the property. A formal review was underway. Not dramatic, just procedural. But procedures have consequences when paperwork contradicts intentions. My brother finally snapped. "You think you've won?" he hissed one night when our parents were out. "You think this ends well for you?" I looked at him, not angry, not afraid. Just observant. "I think this ends accurately." That seemed to unsettle him more than any threat could have. Money started returning in fragments. Small transfers. Test balloons. They hoped I'd accept partial restitution and call it closure. I documented every cent and did nothing else. Silence again was my leverage. Their plans unraveled in public ways they couldn't control. Renovations halted. Credit lines paused. Conversations stopped mid-sentence when I entered rooms. The house, their supposed asset, became a liability full of quiet witnesses. One evening I heard my father say, "We should have handled her differently." Not we were wrong. Just we miscalculated. That's when I knew it was over. Not because they felt remorse, but because the system no longer belonged to them. The numbers had stopped obeying their narrative. The documents had found their voice. And I didn't have to raise mine at all. The response came from places I never contacted directly. That was the strange part. I didn't need to chase consequences. They followed the paperwork on their own. The bank's review escalated into a compliance investigation. Routine language again. Unemotional. It notified all account holders that continued access would remain restricted pending final determination. My father read the email twice, then forwarded it to a lawyer who never replied. A week later, a certified letter arrived from the county assessor's office. It acknowledged the deed discrepancy, confirmed my co-signatory status, and outlined the next steps for clarification of ownership interests. No accusations. Just procedure moving forward because it was required to. My parents stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. My mother stopped crying. That scared me more. She became efficient. Cleaned aggressively. Spoke only when necessary. People who believe they can still fix things don't act like that. People who know they're losing do. My brother tried distance next, staying away, avoiding the house, hoping absence would dull the momentum. It didn't. Legal processes don't care who shows up emotionally. They only care who signed what and when. One afternoon, a letter arrived addressed to me. Not the family. Not the household. Me. It confirmed the return of the remaining funds, every dollar accounted for, itemized, and transferred back into an account under my sole control. The language was dry, but my hands still trembled slightly as I read it. Not from relief. From validation. That money had been treated like leverage for so long that seeing it restored felt unreal, like reclaiming something I'd been told was never mine to begin with. My parents didn't congratulate me. They didn't apologize either. They grew quiet in a way that wasn't strategic anymore. Just empty. The final notice arrived on a Friday morning. It informed all parties that the attempted ownership transfer would not proceed as filed due to incomplete disclosure and conflicting interests. Further actions, it stated, would require mutual consent or court involvement. My father sat at the kitchen table for a long time after reading it. He didn't look angry. He looked tired. That night, my mother asked if I planned to take things further. I considered the question carefully before answering. "No," I said. "I plan to finish them." She flinched, not because of the words but because of the calm behind them. Finishing didn't mean destruction. It meant resolution. The system had already done the loud part. All that was left was acknowledgement. They stopped trying to control the narrative after that. There were no more guilt talks. No more offers. No more threats disguised as concern. They understood now that whatever power they thought they had came from my silence, and that silence was no longer passive. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post. I didn't explain myself to anyone. I just lived differently. And that, more than anything else, told them this wasn't a phase or a tantrum or a negotiation. It was the end of an arrangement that should never have existed. I was no longer waiting for permission. The system had already answered. And it answered clearly. The reckoning didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened on a Sunday afternoon with the windows open and the house unusually quiet. My father asked me to sit with him at the dining table. Not demanded. Asked. That alone told me everything I needed to know. My mother stayed in the kitchen, pretending to reorganize cabinets that had already been organized twice that week. My brother wasn't there. He hadn't been there much lately. Distance was his preferred form of accountability. My father folded his hands the same way he always had when he wanted to sound reasonable. You've made your point, he said. Not we were wrong. Not we're sorry. Just that. I didn't make a point, I replied. I corrected a record. He exhaled slowly. You could have come to us first. I met his eyes without heat. I did. For years. You just didn't hear me. That landed. Not dramatically, but permanently. He looked down at the table, tracing a scratch in the wood. I remembered fixing that scratch myself after he'd slammed a glass down during an argument I wasn't allowed to win. We never thought you'd push back like this, he admitted. I know, I said. That was the mistake. My mother finally turned around then. So what now? She asked. Her voice was careful, stripped of performance. Are you staying? It was the first time anyone had asked me that without an assumption attached. Yes, I said. For now. As an owner. Not as an obligation. My father nodded once, stiffly. And us. I chose my words the way you choose where to place furniture in a room you intend to live in peacefully. We coexist, I said. But we don't manage each other anymore. My finances are mine. My space is mine. My decisions are not up for discussion. My mother's mouth tightened. And family? I didn't answer right away. Family, I said finally, isn't access. It's behavior. No one argued. There was nothing left to argue with. That night I set boundaries in writing. Simple. Clear. Unemotional. Shared expenses documented. Private accounts off limits. Advance notice for any changes involving the property. Everything ordinary families do without calling it control. They signed. Not eagerly. Not happily. But they signed. In the weeks that followed, the house changed texture. Conversations became shorter. Politer. Less invasive. My parents stopped commenting on my schedule, my meals, my work. My brother stopped dropping by unannounced. No one said cow anymore. The power shift wasn't loud. It didn't need witnesses. It lived in small moments. My door closing without commentary, my paycheck staying where it belonged, my name appearing on documents without resistance. One evening as I locked my room, my mother said quietly, "You're different." I paused. "No," I said. "I'm consistent now." She didn't respond. And that was fine. Because for the first time, their understanding wasn't required for my life to move forward. Only their compliance. And even that was temporary. The rest was already decided.